Welcome to the Healthy Living Revolution Live. My name is Jennifer Myers. The Healthy Living Revolution is a movement of people who are taking healthy back, and we're offering this series to bring some simple solutions and simple education. Our speaker for this episode is Dr. Mitra Ray. Dr. Ray is an author, a scientist, and the creator of the Shred 10 program. She received a BS from Cornell University and her PhD in biochemistry from Stanford Medical School. Dr. Ray has been working at the cellular level of health for many years, and her research work has been funded by the National Institutes of Health, the American Cancer Society, and an Alzheimer's research grant. Dr. Ray is recognized worldwide for her seminars on health, longevity, and beauty, and has received rave reviews and awards on her books, the latest being, Do You Have the Guts to Be Beautiful? Dr. Ray resides in the state of Washington with her husband and her two beautiful daughters. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Jennifer, for that introduction. And thanks to all of you for coming online to hear a little bit more about omegas as well as our Juice Plus Omega Blend, which I'm really excited about. To tell you the truth, before this came along, when people would ask me what kind of an omega supplement I recommend, I'd say there's nothing out there that I'd really recommend to you. I would recommend that you eat lots of nuts and seeds, grind up flax seeds and chia seeds, put them in your salad, put them in your smoothie, eat lots of a variety of nuts as well. And of course, people weren't doing that. So I'm really excited about this blend. Now, in this talk, I'm going to start at the end because many of you may not be interested in all the geeky science. So the first 10 minutes or so are just about why omegas are important to us, the two most frequently asked questions, and why our Juice Plus Omega Blend might be the answer you're looking for. Then we're going to hear a quick story from Leslie, and then I'm going to spend another 20 minutes or so talking about the gory details of biochemistry and research for all my geeky friends out there. So, why are omegas important? Because they are part of the structure of the membranes of every cell in your body, as well as the membrane of every organelle within every cell, such as the nucleus and the mitochondria. So let's watch a quick movie about the lipid bilayer. Lipids is another word for fat or fatty acid, and omegas are particular kinds of fatty acids that are important for this lipid bilayer.
Between the living machinery of the inner cell and the harsh conditions of the outside world stands the cell's plasma membrane. As crucial as this barrier is, it's surprisingly flexible. Push it and watch it move. Poke hard enough and it might break and begin to regroup. The lipid molecules of the membrane naturally assemble in a double layer because their tails repel water as their heads attract it. Throw in some cholesterol and a few carbohydrates, and you have the basic structure of a plasma membrane. Within these lipid molecules, we also find different proteins which do various things for the cell. For instance, they receive signals from the world outside, or they transport nutrients and waste. So nature composes the membrane with a combination or mosaic of different lipids, carbohydrates, and proteins. And these molecules are not stationary. They constantly move within the structure, fluidly changing their positions. The survival of all life rests on this veil of material. A supple membrane, just 2 molecules thick.
So if we go to the Juice Plus website, if we look at the words in the orange brackets, to me these are profound words if you understand the field of omega nutrition. Juice Plus Omega Blend is a plant-based combination of the omega-3, 5, 6, 7, and 9 fatty acids containing DHA, EPA, and ALA that are derived from fruits, algae, and seed oils. By harvesting omegas from the original algae source instead of fish and using a cold pressing technique for our seeds to maintain the purity of the nutrients, we've ensured our omega blend is sustainable and environmentally friendly. Now, if you look at the label, you also see there's 3, 5, 6, 7, and 9, and you might have read somewhere or heard somewhere that you're not supposed to get too much omega-6. So why is there omega-6 in the capsule? Well, it's because it's part of the natural ratio in Mother Nature of these fatty acids in these plant sources. So to answer the question, I thought we were already getting too much omega-6. I'll jump to the bottom line. The reason we think that is because in the Western diet, we have too much cooking oil, which happens to be high in omega-6. We also have too many animal products, which are also high in omega-6, and we are low in fruits and vegetables. So that's where people thought maybe we're just getting too much omega-6. However, omega-6, linoleic acid is the omega-6 fatty acid found in plants, and it's an essential fat. That means we have to get it in our diet because our body cannot make it. And there's no clinical evidence to support that we are getting too much omega-6. Actually, there's evidence to show that omega-6 is necessary and beneficial. Again, if you want to learn more about that science, I'm going to go into that in part 2. But just to briefly explain, cooking oil isn't bad for us because of the omega-6. It's because of the lipid peroxides we get from heating that oil, and the oils become oxidized, and then they become these sticky, rancid fats called lipid peroxides. Animal products are bad for us, not because of the omega-6, but because of too much saturated fat, which also applies to the fish, because you have bioaccumulation of environmental toxins in all the animal products. If I were to recommend salmon to you, I'd be recommending something that has as much saturated fat as a piece of steak. Now, while salmon have some omegas because they ate some algae, but they also ate a bunch of little fish, and as you eat higher on the food chain, you get this bioaccumulation of toxins. Fish have mercury and PCBs and other environmental toxins that I don't want to have anything to do with. And of course, everybody's telling us we need to eat more fruits and vegetables because we need more phytonutrients in our diet to help our bodies in so many different ways. Also, when you eat an avocado, you don't ask yourself, am I getting too much omega-6? It's the same thing with the contents that go into our Juice Plus Omega blend. Now, it has taken the Juice Plus company over 10 years to create this product, finding the right components as well as the right technology to have a truly superior blend that is, next to none on the market today. So the next question is, why is there so little EPA and DHA in our Juice Plus Omega blend? Because most fish oil supplements have more than a gram of EPA and DHA, which turns out to be not a good thing, which I'll, again, go into more detail in part 2. But let's talk about sustainability and safety. It is no big secret that we are running out of fish on this planet. There's been an exponential drop in fish populations since 1950, and there's also over 100 confirmed cases of extinctions of marine populations in our world oceans. We simply don't have enough fish on this planet for the recommended amount of fish people are supposed to be eating, according to some experts, 2 to 3 servings a week. We just don't have enough fish for that, for the Western world to eat that way. Secondly, we certainly don't have enough fish to make fish oils. So this is not a sustainable industry. And fish don't even make EPA and DHA. They get it from algae, and that's where we want to get it from as well. Also, no fishy burps with Juice Plus Omegas because of the algae instead of the fish. Now, the second piece of information that is so critical is this cold fusing technology. You see, most oil products on the market today use a soft gel type of technology that molds the shell around the oils, but the challenge with this is that the shell material has to be heated to be pliable. So you have heat, which starts the degradation of the oils immediately, and then there's no way to retard the degradation once it has started. So the entire content of the oil in the capsule could be degraded, and you could be paying for rancid fats. Now, the encapsulation technology used to make Juice Plus Omegas is very exciting. You could call it cold fusing. Essentially, they fill the body of 2 pieces of hard capsule with the oils, then blanket it with nitrogen to prevent any degradation as they close the capsule. Then they fuse the cap of the body of the capsule using a special proprietary process that does not include heat to seal the capsule. Given this bit of news about cold fusing technology, even if you, for some reason, you believe you need more omegas, my recommendation is to first always take it in the ratios Mother Nature provides, and secondly, use this cold fusing technology to make sure you're not paying for rancid fats. So my recommendations are to take up to 4 Juice Plus Omega capsules if you're an adult, and 2 Juice Plus Omega capsules for children, maybe 100 pounds being the point of delineation between adult and child dosage. Add the fruit, vegetable, and berry Juice Plus blends for synergy. Why is that? Well, there's this whole field called nutrigenomics. First of all, Juice Plus blends have over 38 clinical studies published, and there's this whole field of nutrigenomics. So I'll just talk about one particular study that showed that Juice Plus regulates over 1,600 metabolic genes. So it impacts over 1,632. It impacted 1,632 genes. Oops, there's a spelling error there. Anyway, it upregulated 1,146 genes, 18 of which are insulating signaling genes, as well as the AMPK genes, and it downregulated 486 genes, 3 of which are lipogenesis genes, and the NF-kappa B gene. So this is, again, I don't want to go into too much science, but it's great to have this positive regulation of your genetic material. You can't change your DNA, but you can change how you express the good ones and downregulate the bad ones. So the synergy of all 4 blends is definitely something that we are researching now. I'm very excited because once I started, I've been taking the 3 blends for 23 years now. Once I added the omegas, I noticed my hair and nails were growing faster, and that to me, that it means that you have lots of nutrient luxury on the inside, because your body is going to pay attention to vital organs first, and when you have enough nutrition, then you can start to, when you have plenty of nutrition, then you can start to grow hair and nails. Let's also listen to Leslie's story of using these blends.
Hi, I'm Leslie Cervantes, and one of my favorite quotes is, "A little bit every day over time equals greatness." When I was 27 years old, I was a military wife, a mother of 3 small children, a business owner, and an athlete. Life was great. Until one morning I woke up and my voice was hoarse. I ended up in the hospital when I lost mobility on the left side of my body, and after 8 days of testing, the doctors released me with no real answers. In my 30s, I continued to see a decline in my health. I suffered from fatigue and was napping 2 to 3 times a day. And soon I was diagnosed with thyroid issues at the age of 34 and was immediately put on medication. And honestly, I couldn't function without it. So over the next 4 years, I struggled to live a normal life. I was no longer eating well or exercising, and even though I was on medication, my body was cold all the time, my stomach was constantly bloated, and I suffered from constipation. I lost a lot of my hair and gained over 30 pounds. I had a lack of motivation, and my eating habits were out of control. My mind was overwhelmed by the simplest of tasks, and I became distant to those I loved. By the time I was 38, I had grown accustomed to my lifestyle and accepted my body's limits. But inside, I was desperate for a change. I was too young to feel this old. So when I heard about Juice Plus, I loved the idea of adding whole fruits, berries, vegetables to my diet. I decided, what do I have to lose? It didn't take me long to start seeing positive results. And I coincidentally ran out of my thyroid medication because I was waiting to see a new doctor who specialized in autoimmune diseases. And to my surprise, I started feeling stronger and had more energy without my medication. And by the time I went in to see him, I wasn't even taking naps anymore. He asked me, "What are you here for today? How are you feeling?" All I could say was, "I feel great." Over the next few months, by making little improvements every day, my health improved, and I decided to add the Juice Plus Omegas. Now this boosted my health to a whole new level. My hair started growing back faster, my nails are indestructible, but most of all, my mental clarity is amazing and I can focus now. My brain is sharper and quicker in making decisions and completing projects. Between the trio capsules, the omegas, and tweaking my dietary choices, I've improved every aspect of my life. My physical and mental health, my relationships, my business, and my motivation to get up and enjoy life every day. I've gone from suffering in silence to living the life that I was meant to live. And by sharing my story, I hope to inspire others to make healthy choices and live a better life.
Okay, let's move on to part 2. So let's dive right into the science of the lipid bilayer on that movie that you saw. Basically, you have two water-loving heads facing the outside of the cell and the inside of the cell. And then you have the hydrophobic tails that are facing each other in that lipid bilayer. And that composition of that lipid bilayer is really important. So I need to explain a few things so you appreciate that. So here you have a basic structure of a fatty acid molecule, and you'll notice on the left that there's a double bond. And in that hydrocarbon tail, where there's a double bond, there's room for more hydrogen atoms, basically. So if we look at that hydrocarbon tail of the fatty acid, when it's saturated, it's very straight up and down, as you see, because all the carbons are maxed out with hydrogen atoms. Whereas on the right, you have an unsaturated fatty acid where there's a kink in the tail because there's a double bond there. And if we go from the end all the way up to carbon 9, that's where the double bond is. That's what makes this an omega-9 fatty acid. Now, one thing to understand is, like in butter, everything's saturated fat. That makes for very stiff sort of surface for the fat. So that means butter is kind of solid at room temperature. Whereas in our cells, we need some amount of unsaturated fat in ratio to the saturated fat, so we have some fluidity. We don't want too little fluidity, and we don't want too much fluidity. So it's important for the body to maintain the right balance of fatty acids in the fluid membrane. This is a really important point to keep in mind. So LA or LNA, sometimes ALA is called LNA. There's lots of different names, but basically there's two essential fatty acids that we get from plants, omega-3 and omega-6. And these are the building blocks for the longer polyunsaturated fatty acids. So this is what the pathways look like. On the left, you have the omega-6 pathway, which is what happens to LA, which is one of the essential fatty acids we get from plants. And on the right is the omega-3 pathway, with ALA becoming EPA and DHA. And EPA and DHA are very important for brain function and cardiovascular health. And just in general, it's good for our cells to have some amount of EPA and DHA. So this is the pathway that people are most interested in because of EPA and DHA. However, omega-6 pathway is also important to the body. And also, just going over a little bit of nomenclature, if you look on the alpha-linolenic acid on the right, there in the parentheses, there's all these numbers. What do they mean? Well, the number 18 means that the ALA has 18 carbon atoms in its hydrocarbon tail. And then the 3 following, it means there's 3 double bonds, and the N3 is another way of saying omega-3. Okay, so this question I already answered. I thought we were already getting too much omega-6, and I already said, well, research doesn't show that, but let's go into understanding why they thought that anybody thought this was a problem. Anyway, the hypothesis was that if we're getting all this omega-6 in our pathway, is it going to compete with the omega-3 pathway? Because they both start out using the same enzyme, delta-6 desaturase. So is delta-6 desaturase are the two pathways going to compete for that same enzyme? And so that was the thinking. But if we look into this research, now this was a study done by Harvard University with Walter Willett, who's very well known in the field of nutrition. He's written at least one book that I know of. Anyway, one of the conclusions they came to with this study is that omega-3 from both seafood and plant sources may reduce CHD risk with little apparent influence from background omega-6 intake. So to summarize this whole omega-6 concern, this is a good summary from the School of Public Health site at Harvard. Most Americans take in far more of another essential fat, omega-6 fats, than they do omega-3 fats. Some experts have raised the hypothesis that I just discussed about that enzyme competition, that this higher intake of omega-6 fats could pose problems, cardiovascular and otherwise, but this has not been supported by evidence in humans. In the health professionals follow-up study, for example, the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fats wasn't linked with risk of heart disease because both of these were beneficial. Many other studies and trials in humans also support cardiovascular benefits of omega-6 fats. Although there is no question that many Americans could benefit from increasing their intake of omega-3 fats, there is evidence that omega-6 fats also positively influence cardiovascular risk factors and reduce heart disease. Okay, so another conclusion from that Harvard study I find interesting is that plant-based omega-3 may particularly reduce CHD risk when seafood-based omega-3 intake is low, which has implications for populations with low consumption or availability of fatty fish. What about the sustainability of fatty fish? So this leads to the other question, how come there is so little EPA in DHA? Because most people are comparing it to fish oil supplements that have more than 1 gram of EPA and DHA. We're talking about the Juice Plus Omegas having not as much EPA and DHA as fish oil supplements, which is going to be a good thing as we move on here. But here's the thing. The reason doctors are so concerned about your EPA and DHA intake is something called the omega-3 index, which is a strong biomarker for CVD. So this is a study, actually it's in press, it's already available online, open source, but it's talking about erythrocyte. So basically if they look at red blood cells and they look at the composition of the omega fats in the membrane of red blood cells, the more omega-3, the combination of EPA and DHA to total phospholipids is the omega-3 index. So if we look at this, all this data, basically there's a trend. If you have your EPA to DHA ratio compared to total fats is less than 4.2%, which is the dark blue curve, that's also the omega-3 index. Then as you move to orange, it's 4.2 to 4.9. Then the gray is 4.9 to 5.7. The yellow is 5.7 to 6.8. And the lighter blue is greater than 6.8. Overall, there's a trend in reducing mortality and risk of heart disease and stroke, etc., as you increase your omega-3 index. So this may make you want to go out and buy some EPA and DHA supplements and take mega doses to increase your omega-3 index. However, that's not a really smart idea. And here you have articles like this to confuse you. Although we are able to convert dietary alpha-linoleic acid into EPA, DPA, which is an intermediary fatty acid between EPA and DHA, which are found in fish and fish oils, this conversion is not efficient in people who consume typical Western diet. So basically it's saying if you take a bunch of alpha-linoleic acid from plants, you're not going to be able to convert it to EPA and DHA. So these are the articles that are confusing us because of this pathway from ALA becoming EPA and DHA. Remember, ALA is the plant essential fatty acid. However, there's this conclusion from the Harvard study, plant-based omega-3 may particularly reduce CHD risk when seafood-based intake is low. So what they're saying in this article is that too much EPA is going to provide a feedback loop to slow down the conversion of ALA to EPA and DHA. This is very interesting. The body is obviously tightly regulating the amount of EPA if there's a feedback mechanism. You wouldn't have a feedback mechanism unless the body was wanting to control the amount of EPA that it was making. Now, if you start to take a bunch of EPA, it's also going to inhibit this transformation of ALA into EPA and DHA. Really important point to keep in mind. So this is another study that really speaks to this conversion of ALA to EPA and DHA. This was done with 14,422 people in Norfolk, England, and they looked at basically categorizing 4 different types of eaters: fish-eating meat eaters, non-fish eating meat eaters, vegetarians who were still consuming dairy and eggs, and vegans who were not consuming any animal products. And the data, there's so much data in that study that I actually had to create an Excel spreadsheet to explain to you how important this study is and the findings. So if you look at the top, they looked at all the consumption of dietary ALA from plants, and they're all in the same order of magnitude. Then with the EPA and DHA, that's in the blue, basically the fish eaters had an order of magnitude more EPA and DHA in their diet from eating fish, obviously, than meat eaters and vegetarians and vegans who were not consuming any fish. So you would expect that the fish eaters in the darker blue would have the most amount of plasma EPA and DHA. However, they do not. They have pretty much the same order of magnitude of EPA and DHA as the people not eating fish. This means that, and the authors concluded that the vegans and the non-fish eaters are able to convert ALA into EPA and DHA. So this is now another study suggesting the same thing. The implications of this study are that if conversion of plant-based sources of omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids were found to occur in intervention studies and were sufficient to maintain health, it could have significant consequences for public health recommendations and for preservation of the wild fish supply. This is very interesting to me. Yet there's all these articles out there that tout the American Heart Association's recommendation for supplementation with fish oil capsules to improve cardiac health. And I think the American Heart Association's maybe done the public a little bit of a disservice because we cannot have too much EPA in our diet. So the whole fish oil pill story started with the discovery in the 1970s by two Danish scientists who visited remote Inuit villages in northwest Greenland. And the people in those villages ate mostly whales, seals, and fish, but had low levels of cholesterol and triglycerides. So they hypothesized it must be the omega-3 in their fishy diets. So in 1989, there was a study published in Lancet showing that with 2,000 Welsh men, there was 29% less heart attacks in men eating more oily fish. So then in 2002, the American Heart Association issues this scientific statement concluding that omega-3 fatty acids have been shown in epidemiological and clinical trials to reduce the incidence of cardiovascular disease based on contradictory evidence. In 2003, some of the authors of that Lancet DART study went back and did a longer-term study and showed that men advised to eat oily fish, and particularly those supplied with fish oil capsules, had a higher risk of cardiac death. The excess risk of cardiac death was largely located among the subgroup given fish oil capsules. And then in 2013, the Journal of the National Cancer Institute reported 43% increased risk of prostate cancer from potent fish oil supplements. So let's take a further look at that study. This is a study by scientists at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center in Seattle linking eating a lot of oily fish or taking potent fish oil supplements to a 43% increased risk of prostate cancer overall and a 71% increased risk of aggressive prostate cancer. This was reported in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute. Another study with Gray and Bolin, where they looked at 22 of the 24 studies showing no evidence of the benefits of fish oil supplements, was published in JAMA back in 2014. Then most recently, in March of 2018, you have yet another study, another meta-analysis of 10 trials involving 77,917 individuals. Their question was, does supplementation with marine-derived omega-3 fatty acids have any associations with reductions in fatal and non-fatal coronary heart disease? And the results provide no support for current recommendations to use omega-3 fatty acid supplements for the prevention of fatal coronary heart disease. So this reflects that even when among scientists diet notions can persist, even when stronger evidence emerges contradicting them, what we have found is that the original papers continue to be cited well after they've been refuted. These claims do not die easily. Is it time for the American Heart Association to revise fish oil recommendations? For example, they recommend that if you have heart disease, you may want to talk to their doctor about omega-3 supplements. But former AHA President Robert Eckel said that he thinks that this recommendation needs to be revised. It would be a good time for that to be updated, Eckel said. Almost all studies of fish oil supplements show no benefit. I really feel this remains unproven. This is a really good recommended reading talking about our dietary recommendations for the use of fish oil sustainable. They're really reviewing all the studies. I don't have time to go into it here, but I highly recommend maybe take a screenshot. This is a good review to read. So the take-home message is, in the words of Michael Pollan, eat food, not too much, mainly plants. We do know that plant omega-3s are beneficial to us because they reduce inflammation and help our immune system. They reduce heart disease risk, reduce cholesterol, regulate blood pressure, important for brain development and diabetes. Again, we do need our omega-3s in our diet. But I went to the NIH site to see what is the recommendation for EPA and DHA. So on that site, they talk about intake recommendations for fatty acids and other nutrients are provided in the Dietary Reference Intakes developed by the Food and Nutrition Board of Institute of Medicine, now called the National Academy of Medicine. When the Institute of Medicine last reviewed omega-3s, insufficient data were available to establish RDA or EAR, so the IOM establishes AIs, or adequate intakes, from all ages based on omega-3 intakes in healthy populations. So this is what they recommend. Now, from birth to 12 months, they're talking about total omegas, which would be a combination of EPA and DHA, which is found in breast milk, plus plant ALA. Beyond that, you're going to see only a recommendation for ALA, nothing about EPA and DHA. That's very interesting to me. I wouldn't recommend a certain amount of EPA and DHA either. So here's Juice Plus plant omegas that are safe, they're a sustainable source, they're a mixture of omegas, and they're encapsulated without heat, which protects the delicate omegas from being oxidized. And here's some benefits of the algae oil. It supports healthy pregnancy, boosts eye health, supports cardiovascular health, aids cognitive development and function, improves memory, and reduces inflammation. We do know that about the omega-3s. And you don't get the fishy burps. So just to kind of summarize what's happening with omega-3 research. Yes, the omega-3 index of red blood cells is an important biomarker for overall health and reduction of mortality. However, conversion of plant ALA to EPA and DHA is higher in non-fish eating population and in vegans, as EPA provides this negative feedback loop for conversion of ALA to EPA and DHA. So why does too much fish oil cause harm? There's conflicting evidence if any amount helps at all. Is it because the capsules had damaged fatty acids, as I discussed, that this cold fusing technology is very new, and most of the capsules out there probably have damaged fatty acids? Or is it that you've got too much EPA and DHA in relation to other fatty acids, such as saturated fat? Remember, I talked about that fluid membrane. You want to have the right ratio of EPA and DHA to saturated fat. If you get too much, your membranes can become too fluid, and that's not a good thing either. And if you don't get enough, your membranes are too rigid with too much saturated fat. So this may have a lot to do. If I were to design a study, I would definitely really look at the saturated fat in somebody's diet. So meat eaters may need way more omega-3 in their diet, or maybe take a fish oil supplement. Maybe that's why you have some contradictory evidence, because if you're eating a bunch of saturated fat, you may need more omega-3 fats. But if you're vegan and you're not getting all that saturated fat in your diet, you may need a lot less EPA and DHA to get that membrane fluidity. Plant ALA omega-3s are beneficial and sufficient, and plant LA or omega-6 is also beneficial. So the question about are we getting too much omega-6 is not really a concern at all. And again, getting too much EPA and DHA is probably not a good thing. We want to keep those numbers low. Now let's move on to the other fatty acids in the omega blend, because that's exciting new territory. Omega-7 and omega-9 are monounsaturated fatty acids, and omega-5 is a conjugated linolenic acid. So these are the sources that are used for these different oils found in the omega blend. So I'll go through each one of them. So the sea buckthorn whole berry oil is used, the whole berry is used to retain more of the micronutrients. It's a rich source of omega-7, which is a main component of skin. And there's topical applications already documented, also therapeutic for thinning hair. And in this study, they not only talked about it being a topical agent, but it can also nourish the skin when taken orally if adequate quantities of sea buckthorn or its oil are consumed, and has proven to be a useful method for treating systemic skin diseases such as atopic dermatitis. Pomegranate seed oil has been touted as a medicinal plant for a long time, and it's rich in this rare omega-5 essential fatty acid, which is the only known botanical source of conjugated linolenic acid, also known as pinoic acid, one of the most potent antioxidants known to modern science, and a natural phytoestrogen. Now, remember that study I talked about where potent fish oils increase your risk of prostate cancer? Well, in this recent review of pomegranate and its components as an alternative treatment for prostate cancer, they noticed that different components of pomegranates are useful for slowing down the progression of cancer, especially metastasis. And they talk about the omega-5 from pomegranate seed oil being important, and that's found in the omega blend, as well as the polyphenols from pomegranate are also important, and the vineyard blend is very rich in polyphenols in general, including those from pomegranate. So prostate cancer is the number 2 killer for men next to heart disease, and here we have some natural ways to retard that progression of prostate cancer. Okay, 5 reasons to use raspberry seed oil. It is a broad spectrum sunscreen as it absorbs UVB and C. It's highly anti-inflammatory. It reduces destruction of collagen, reduces inflammation, high in vitamin E, high in phytoesterols, which repair skin damage from sun and the environment. Benefits of safflower oil. It's an effective remedy against obesity, helps with hair and scalp, boosts quality of and appearance of skin, aids in managing diabetes, reduces risk of atherosclerosis and strokes, helps to regulate cholesterol levels in the body, helps to decrease severity of PMS. And the benefits of tomato seed oil. Topically helps eliminate scars, wrinkles, rashes, stretch marks, burns, cracked and dry skin, chapped lips, promotes hair growth and repairs split ends. It's an antioxidant that neutralizes free radicals, and it promotes a healthy immune system. So I've written a book on skin health. It's something that I've been interested in for a long time. We know the fruit, veggie, and berry blends support healthy skin. But now with all these topical applications of these oils that I just discussed, I've also started to use it as a topical product, because I just poke a hole in the omega capsule and then I hydrate my skin and then emulsify the oil on top of that hydrating skin to absorb it better. And I have started to see results with that as well. And when I look at the label for our omegas, I'm excited to see that there isn't so much DHA and EPA. It's got a nice amount of omega-3, 375 milligrams. And so here is a safe, sustainable answer to the need for essential fatty acids in our diet. And I hope I've been able to elucidate some of the science behind why we don't need to worry about too much omega-6 and why we don't want to have maybe too much EPA and DHA from fish, as well as fish oil supplementation or any kind of supplementation. We want the body to intelligently figure out that right ratio of unsaturated to saturated fatty acids in the diet. Thank you for your attention.
We would like to encourage you to get back with the person who invited you onto this webinar to learn more. Thank you again, Dr. Ray, and we want to thank you all for joining us.